Hello and welcome to part 5 of our series on Tekken 7 basics. I believe we can finish this out in one more video after this, so we're very close to the end, but yet another reminder that the written version of this guide is completed, so if you want to take a look at that last little bit we have left, you can certainly do that. I've also once again included a link to a Tekken glossary and jargon list in case you need to reference that at any point. Let's do it! Now we can start talking some more fun stuff. We've addressed the juggle system slightly already, but we'll now formally discuss it here. Truthfully, it's not too hard to grasp, which is nice for newer players, so let's start with launchers. Launchers come in a variety of forms. Some launch your opponent super high into the air, while some may do the exact opposite and slam to the ground in a way that allows you to pick them up. In either case, a launcher is a move that allows you to put your opponent in a floating state from which they cannot escape until they hit the ground. The floating state is fairly consistent. The more hits without touching the ground, the farther away your opponent will float and the faster they'll fall. Also, the damage for each subsequent hit scales consistently. 70% for the first airborne hit, 50% for the second, 40% for the third, and 30% for every hit beyond that. Juggles offer a variety of different situations because of how different moves can cause different kinds of stuns and airborne movement. Some of this we'll discuss a little bit later when we discuss getting off the ground. Other things we will save for an intermediate guide. Tekken 7 also utilizes a tailspin mechanic. This allows you to extend combos in two ways. It can either A, allow you more time to run into range for a hit, or B, allow you more time to execute a slower, more powerful move that you might otherwise not be able to land during a normal float. Although a tailspin has no unique function at the wall, note that if you float your opponent to a breakable wall and then use a tailspin move to break the wall, it will count as a tailspin. This does not apply if the tailspin move hits them grounded and then breaks the wall. As an example, let's say you're playing Law and you juggle your opponent to a breakable wall. You then use back 3 to break the wall. You cannot tailspin after the wall breaks in this instance. On the other hand, if your opponent has their back to the breakable wall and they're standing and you hit them with the back 3, which will also break the wall, you can still tailspin afterwards. When a tailspin connects with a non-airborne opponent, a couple of things can happen. For some, they simply knock down or they can launch, the first hit being considered a tailspin, which happens with many of them on counter hit. Otherwise, these moves will put your opponent in a standing spin state with what many refer to as a ballerina state. These hits give massive frame advantage, most of them being greater than +10. While this advantage is amazing, it does not guarantee any follow-ups. The system will still allow your opponent to block during this spin state. But this advantage allows you many opportunities for uninterruptible offense. Note again that at the wall, there's nowhere for your opponent to go, so instead they simply slide down the wall faster and faster after subsequent hits. For the most part, you're allowed roughly 4 hits before they slide too far for any more, although as we've mentioned, walls can be weird sometimes and your opponent may impact the wall in a way that allows limited to no follow-up. We just mentioned breakable walls, so let's discuss stage gimmicks. For the most part, they're very simple and straightforward. They come in 3 varieties: breakable wall, no stage change, breakable wall with a stage change, and breakable floors. All 3 act as combo extenders. With the first type, the wall breaks and simply reveals more stage. An example would be G-Core Helipad. In this scenario, your opponent falls to the ground in a slow crumple. With the second and third types, you and your opponent will fall down into a secondary part of the stage. Jungle Outpost is an example of a wall that does this. Forgotten Temple is an example of a floor that does this. When you're first learning a character and experimenting with their moves, it's really important to examine their wall break and floor break moves. You need to know how fast these moves are and what kinds of properties they have, like mid, high, etc. This will help you learn how applicable they are in any given situation. Unfortunately, because wall break moves can vary so much, there's not much more we can say that would apply generally to all break moves. Just keep in mind that breaking a wall or a floor typically leads to far bigger damage, so you'll definitely want to study what your character can do. With one exception, parries and reversals are not universal, so their characteristics will depend on the character. Before we talk about general features of parries and reversals, let's first talk about the universal one, the low parry. And for the sake of simplicity, I will use the terms parry and reversal interchangeably throughout this. The universal low parry is fairly simple. While facing your opponent, pressing down forward at the same time or briefly before, your opponent's low attack will result in a parry. Your character will toss your opponent's limb to the side and knock them down, which will put them in a floating state. From here, you can do a normal juggle. Low parries will not work against elbows, knees, weapon-based attacks, or rage arts. The universal low parry is the only one that can be performed with just directional inputs. All others require attack buttons. But just like the universal low parry, all other reversals will only successfully parry an attack while the parry/reversal window is active. Otherwise, reversals come in a variety of forms, which results in many exceptions to the rules. First, most reversals work in a similar fashion as an attack. They have a startup period, an active window, and a recovery period. If an attack comes in contact with your reversal during the active window, then some kind of success animation will follow. Otherwise, you will take the hit as normal. Of course, there are exceptions to this. Both Leroy and Negan, for example, have low parries from their stance, but their stances have no time limit. So as long as they are in stance, the parry window will remain active. Next, many reversals automatically go into an animation that is similar to a throw, while others may require additional inputs. For instance, both Jin's and Leroy's parries simply move them out of the way. They do not automatically go into an attack, nor do they change how the opponent recovers. In other words, the parry acts almost like a forced whiff. This means they have a limited amount of time to sneak in a counterattack, and that counter window will vary depending on what move they parried. Also, most reversals will not work against the moves mentioned earlier, elbows, knees, and so on, but some will. Leroy and Jin, again, can parry elbows and knees. Negan's stance reversal can even counter weapon-based attacks. On the other hand, there are some reversals that will reverse only a specific kind of move. Brian's parry only works against punches, for instance. Lastly, you might also encounter something called a chicken. A chicken is when you reverse a reversal. Not all reversals can be chickened. Examples of those that can be chickened include reversals from Paul, Deviljin, and Nina. To perform a chicken, press forward 1+3 or forward 2+4 after your attack has been successfully reversed. Which chicken you use will depend on what limb is getting reversed. For a left kick or left punch, use forward 1+3. For a right kick or a right punch, use forward 2+4. If performed correctly, the announcer will say chicken, you'll break out of the reversal, and you will hit your opponent for a small amount of damage. Thanks for watching part 5. Again, we hope you enjoyed it and hope it was helpful if you're a newer player. As mentioned, reminder that the full written guide is already completed and you can find the link in the description below. If it isn't too bulky, we should only have one video left to go. As always, we hope you'll give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. I also do as much streaming as I possibly can, so you can find my Twitch link below as well. I also have links to Twitter and Facebook that you'll see there. If you really like the channel content, please also consider supporting us on Patreon. That's the absolute best way to support your favorite content creators. With that, we will see you all for the last part, part 6. Have a good day and stay safe.